we will speak to Mr. Langone. Oh, he told I could do Ken.
Ken.
Okay. We'll ask questions for about 35 to 40 minutes, and then it's your turn. There's about 10 to 15 minutes to ask questions of Mr. Langone. Now, students, this is pretty much your only shot at Mr. Langone, so I'd use this opportunity, don't you think?
Ken,
this is your only shot at Ken. And I'm going to stop making that mistake. So use it, all right, when we get to that, get to that point. All right, you ready to go?
Ready to go.
So we entitled this Investing for the Long Term. What criteria do you look for in a good investment? What are some of the things that stand out for you as you look for good long-term investments?
The people.
Okay.
It's that simple. I like to spend time with them. I like to talk to them. I like to know about their personal lives. Mm-hmm. I like to know what drives them, what motivates them, what their values are. As I reflect back on my life, and pardon my voice, I was just getting over a bout of laryngitis. I like to know that if they succeed, and this is a guess, of course, if they succeed, they'll remain successful with their values intact.
Okay.
Okay. I'm a devout Roman Catholic, and so spirituality is a very important part of my life.
Yeah.
I think the greatest knowledge I get is out of the Bible. And if you think of the things that the Bible tells you, they all work in the business setting, in a tough, competitive business setting. Kindness, generosity, thoughtfulness, you name it.
Turn the other cheek?
Yeah, turn the other cheek sometimes, but sometimes you fight.
Okay.
You know, it depends.
Jesus also overturned tables,
Well,
right?
he got a little mad when the guys were moving money around in the synagogue, but seriously, if I could only advise, if I had a chance to say you can only do one thing, I would submit that if you read the Bible and studied it, not so much in the literal sense, but in the meanings of what's happening, I think it's a good lesson for success.
How do you discover a person's values? Because you know, when you think about a financier investing in a company, is it what they say? You have deep conversations with them?
Look, there's body language. There's, actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
And you want to know about them. You want to know about their past. You want to know a little bit about what experiences they've had and whether their aspirations are realistic.
Okay.
And the greatest lessons that I've had in measuring and judging people came as a result of being a caddy, a waiter, a clerk in a grocery store, a day laborer. Why? Because those are all jobs that the people that are around you have a tendency to drop their guard. One of the things I love to do is, if I'm contemplating an investment, is to invite the person or the people that I'm thinking of investing with to breakfast. And I love to watch their interaction with the waiter. How do they treat him?
Is there respect there?
Well, and by the way, we go back to the Bible. That's what it's all about. The fact that I was a caddy, that didn't make me any less a person than I am now, is whatever you want to call me. But I think the human condition and the response of people to people that normally aren't, you don't have your best face on, tells you a lot about that person's values. People talk about, and it has been an incredible success, the incredible success of the Home Depot. I mean, 3 guys, 2 of them had just been fired from their last job.
Right.
And we went around and begged and borrowed and stole $2 million. Literally, any way we can get money, we raised the $2 million. And we have 330,000 associates today. And
grown a little bit.
Well, I would argue that when we set out to start the business, one of the things we determined was that while the customer was important, our people were far more important. Why? Because we can't touch every single one of those tens of millions of customers every year. But every one of those 330,000 people each touch one of those customers.
Right.
So if you take the equation and say, I'm going to take care of these people, and they're going to take care of our customers, but you have to empower them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make them feel they're part of the exercise, and that they are the most important part of the exercise.
Okay.
And little things. I mean, you know, I make it a point to tell all the kids, and I have a simple rule: anybody under 78 is a kid. I'm 78, so all right.
Welcome to
So
kiddom.
don't be upset if I call you a kid.
Not a problem at all.
But I kind of like the idea of the kids calling me Ken. And
Yeah.
Bernie's the same way with Bernie, and Arthur was the same way with Arthur, and Pat Farrow was the same way. And the other thing I like is I'm always hoping that God will make sure there's a piece of paper on the floor or a piece of litter on the floor in the store that I'm walking with the kids so I can bend down and pick it up. Why is that important? Because that connects me with that kid and lets the kid know that I'm not too big to do that job either. Mm-hmm. Okay? And in fact, Bernie and Arthur and I never ever went into a Home Depot store where we didn't push a few carts in from the parking lot. And we pray to God that the kids would see us so they understand we're in this together.
And you really liked walking the aisles and being
Oh, I
part
loved
of
it. Oh, I loved it. I mean, and I still do.
Do you do that with, is that a philosophy of investing that you get to know?
Here's what happened. You know, most good things happen by accident. Call it serendipity.
Yeah.
We had just started the company, and mind you, I was not a retailer. Bernie and Arthur were the retailers. I was the money guy
Right.
with no money.
Yeah. You talked a good game, though.
Oh, hey, look, smoke and mirrors helps every once in a while.
All right.
So anyway, so we were at a board meeting in 1982, and we'd just gone public, and I'm talking about this in the store and that in the store, and the other directors are saying to me, where are you getting this from? Where are you learning this stuff from? And I says, I go to the stores and I talk to the kids. And one thing about these kids, they don't care who you are, they'll tell you everything. So I said, it wouldn't be a bad idea if you people did the same thing I did. I said, in fact, unless there's any pushback, I think each one of us ought to walk 3 stores every 90 days.
Okay.
The result of that was that when we had board meetings, most of the time was spent talking about what we saw and what we heard in the stores. That's where the business is. That's where you succeed. That's where you make your money. And to this day, it's very, very important. And about 6 months ago, I was in a store, and my father was a plumber, so I have an affinity for plumbing products.
So, I love a good plumbing product.
Well, I like them especially if I can fix it or use it, right? So anyway, I'm walking, and there's 2 old guys by a hot water heater, GE hot water heater, John, by the way, made by Rheem. I made a deal with Welch, where we had Rheem make the hot water heaters, and GE stuck their logo on it, and it was great for everybody. It was a great product. Anyway, so these 2 guys are talking, and I'm over there, and I'm explaining to them what recover means, which is how fast it takes to get the water hot again and all this stuff. And so all of a sudden, I see a kid with an apron on, and I said, do me a favor. I said, young man, are you here? He said, yeah. I said, would you help these guys? They need some help with a hot water heater. He said, okay. So I kept walking around the store, and I'll clean it up a little bit. He wasn't so kind. But anyway, I'm 3 aisles over about a half an hour later, and here's that kid in that aisle with another associate with an apron on. So I walk away from him, but I couldn't help but hear the one kid think, you see that old guy just walking there? He's that old guy trying to sell those 2 guys a hot water heater over in the other aisle.
Get a load of that guy.
He didn't know who I was, and it was okay. But the point is, we always believed that this is what made us. Our success is driven largely by these wonderful people that work in these stores. And we always celebrated them.
Yeah.
And you asked me if I wanted to say something first. I didn't, but I'll say it now. America's best days are ahead of it. I wish I was your age. The opportunities that are out there now are mind-boggling. You may think that all the great discoveries have been discovered and all the great technology's been done. It hasn't even begun yet. And I just wish, although I wouldn't want to go through some of the agony what you go through being young, but I just wish I was your age, because I really believe the opportunities in America especially, this is the greatest country on earth, and our best days are ahead of us, and you kids have a fabulous opportunity with a good education, with kindness and thoughtfulness and consideration for other people. You have a great opportunity to be big successes at whatever you choose to do. Okay?
Great.
So don't forget that.
That's great. We had a question coming on whether you were bullish on America.
I've never been more bullish, but I've been 100% invested my whole life, so that's nothing new.
Right.
Then when the markets go down, it doesn't feel very good, but when the markets go up, it ain't a bad day.
It feels good.
But seriously, we're driven. What I want to say was, we have 3,000 people today that are still with Home Depot. 3,000. That started in the lot. What does that mean? They started pushing carts in from the parking lot and helping people load their cars up after they made their purchases.
Right.
We have 3,000. We have 3,000 people who are multimillionaires today because they joined us, they put their shoulder to the wheel. We believe in all kinds of equity incentives for our people, options and restricted stock units and savings plans. And thank God, of course, the company did very well. But because we did very well, all of our people did very well. This past quarter, we have 2,500 stores, and we have a program called Success Sharing. So in addition to your pay, if your store makes plan, the store gets a bonus to be paid out to every single person. And every one of our stores exceeded plan in the January 31st quarter.
That's terrific.
That's pretty good.
Congratulations.
Okay. Well,
Nice
congratulations.
work there.
Congratulations to that. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I need to introduce the rest of the people up
Go
here. Luis Gonzalez Rios.
So far, they've been all softballs.
I know.
Throw me a fastball.
We're going to get a fastball in
Go
here.
ahead.
Luis is a triple major in international business, economics, and marketing, and he's going to go work for PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Wonderful.
And Marilyn Pizer, who you'll hear from in a little bit, is an honors marketing major and plays varsity volleyball. So she may,
Throw one at me.
send one your
Slam
way.
one on me, right?
That's right.
Luis? Ken.
Mr. Ken.
Mr. Ken.
I
You'll
tried
get
it.
You'll get it eventually. Go ahead.
Doesn't work. You mentioned that good things sometimes happen by accident, and you're either...
Bad things, too.
It appears to me that you have had many good accidents happen to you, or you do something special, and you're being very humble about it.
No.
So I would like to ask you, back in 1968, with H. Ross Perot, he wants to take his company public,
Right.
Electronic Data Systems, and you had two big disadvantages going against you. One was you'd never done it before, an IPO. The second one was you had the major financial players such as Goldman, Merrill, Salomon Brothers. What do you think in that instance made him believe in you? I mean, it was early in your career. He couldn't have had a track record.
Well, I had, quite by accident, I found out he existed and he was going to go public. I didn't know who. I'd never heard of Ross Perot before the previous Saturday night. And I didn't tell him that, by the way. I've never told him
that needs to stay in the room.
And so I was at a party in Washington, and one of the guys who was there was his partner and told me they were getting ready to go public. And I said, do you suppose I can get an appointment to go see him? And he said, sure, call me Monday. I want to be careful because I think there's a few priests around here tonight, so
there are a couple. Yeah.
Anyway, that Saturday night we had a few pops, and we were being ourselves, and I think we might have used a couple of choice bad words. And so Monday morning I called Jack Haidt and I said, well, Jack, how do I stand? He said, well, you got an appointment at 11:30 on Wednesday morning. You're to be there exactly at 11:30, and you got 30 minutes. and you have to leave exactly at noon. And I said, okay. And he said, by the way, all those words we were using Saturday night, don't use one of them. I said, okay.
Keep it clean.
So we get down there, and it was scary. And by the way, the sad part of the story is we just hired 2 young men graduated from the Harvard Business School, and if some of you may remember, there was a horrible fire up here at the Hilton Inn in Rye-Town. It was set by a staff member. He set arson, and 2 guys were killed. These 2 guys were with me, were the 2 guys that were killed in that fire. Isn't that sad? Look. So anyway, we're exactly at 11:30, the door opens and we're escorted into this room, and here's this little guy, we barely could see his eyes over his desk, and he gets up and he's, hi, I'm Ross Perot.
And the ears too?
Jug ears, a whole bit, right? Everything is, all the cartoons are correct. Anyway, and he, by the way, he and I are very, very close personal friends, and he would laugh, so I'm not. So we sit down, and he said, happy you guys came down. He said, let me tell you what all these other firms are telling me. And so for the next 29 and a half minutes, he told me what White Weld and Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch and Kidder Peabody, this guy said this, and this guy said this, and this guy said this. And there's 30 seconds left on the clock. So I'm thinking, do I throw a Hail Mary pass or what? So he said, well, what do you got to say? He said, well, Mr. Perot, I said, Jack told me I had 30 minutes and it's just about up. How about if I arrange to come down and see you sometime and we can talk? And he says to me, what do you mean? I said, well, Jack said I had 30 minutes and I didn't want to, I know you're a busy man and I appreciate the time he gave us. I was almost going to say, and I appreciate the tutorial on Wall Street,
Right.
I didn't. And what do you think of what I said? I said, Mr. Perot, that's the biggest pile of horse manure I've ever heard in my life. And he said, what do you mean? And we talked for 13 hours. We talked until 1 o'clock in the morning, and he was driving me because we were planning to come back at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the 3 o'clock plane. He was driving us around Dallas looking for a drugstore where we could find toothbrushes and toothpaste. Yeah, but I wanted to get a clean t-shirt too. I mean, I didn't bring anything down. And so he called me, that was on a Wednesday, and he called me the following Friday, 2 days later, and he said, I was going to make a decision, but I want to get to know you better. And he said to me, do me a favor, will you come back down? I said, absolutely, I'd love to. Well, by the way, in those 13 hours, this is remarkable. We found out that we were married the same hour, the same day, the same year, at exactly the same time. He in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and me in New York. And we talked about everything under the sun. We talked about him being in the Navy. We talked about his father being a cotton broker and my father being a plumber. And we talked about the Depression and how it impacted him and so forth. Anyway, so I said, I'll be happy to come down. He said, well, do me a favor. Next time you come down, bring some of those prospectuses.
Yeah.
I said, sure. Yeah, I said, I'll bring them down. So the one thing I never did was lie to him. So I go down because I haven't got any prospectuses because there are none. So we go in and we're talking for about 3 more hours, and finally he says to me, you're really giving me a lot to think about. And he said, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. He said, but I really feel like I've had an awakening. And I said, well, I hope I've given you what I consider to be the important aspects of your deal. And so he always drove me to the airport and he always picked me up.
Himself?
To this day, himself. If I go to Dallas, he will meet me at the airport and he'll take me back. And he's still a good driver.
Okay, good.
And so on my way to the airport, by the way, Ken, he says, did you bring those prospectuses? I said, no. Did you forget them? I said, no, I didn't forget them. There are none. He says, what do you mean? I said, Ross, if I do your deal, it'll be the first deal I ever did. And I said, but don't get frightened. I said, you've got such a great company that if I screw the deal up, it'll still get done. But it'll be over for me because I will have had my one shot.
Okay.
And it will have been blown. And of course, the deal came, and he did give us the business, and we did do very well. And the deal did extremely well, and he and I have stayed the best of friends for 46 years.
That's terrific. But you had to believe in yourself.
Well, I had to believe in myself, but I also had to believe in what he was doing. What I saw in his company was unique.
So you knew he had something.
Oh, he had something. It was mind-boggling. And more importantly, the way he valued and respected and took care of his people.
Okay.
Was something that you had to see, and you had to say, that matters, that makes a difference.
Yeah. I want to go to
Go
Maryland,
ahead.
but
Did I answer your question?
But notice,
Absolutely.
not all the finances. There's a lot of knowing the people.
It's all about the people.
Yeah. Maryland.
So I just wanted to ask a question. Networking is obviously central in the type of work that you do, and Bernie Marcus in his book, Built from Scratch, is quoted as saying that you like to be in the background but make a difference, and that you can affect more positive change in a day of phone calls than most people can accomplish in a year. What do you think
that's
about
an
that?
overstatement. I think that's a major overstatement, but I'm glad for Bernie's confidence. What do I think? You can never be too honest. You can never be too rich. And you can never have too many friends. Okay? That's simple. And I mention the word rich because you'd be amazed what good you can do if you have the wherewithal, assuming you understand that you're nothing more than a custodian, a trustee. Because, you know, I have not seen, and I'm looking for one, but I've not seen a hearse with a U-Haul behind it yet. So, you know, so I guess if I go out with this suit and these shoes shine like this, I will have had a pretty good life. But seriously, it's all about the people. I can't stress enough the importance of people. Why? I'll give you for instance. Sam Walton in 1969 was running 4 Ben Franklin franchise 5 and dime stores. And K. Kresge, SS Kresge, had just opened up its first Kmart. It was a $1 billion company. Walmart today is the biggest corporation in the world. And Kresge's gone, and Kmart's gone. What happened? Home Depot, we literally begged, borrowed, and stole $2 million to start Home Depot. When Kmart saw our success, they threw $2 billion at a business to start something called Builders Square. We whipped them like they were a rented mule. They're gone.
Interesting.
They're gone. What was the difference? The people. When we walked into a store, we celebrated our people. We put our arms around them. We thanked them. We tell them how grateful we are they're with us. We want to know from them, how can we make this the best place for you to come every day? Coincidentally, I happened to be in a Kmart store when the then chairman was walking the store. Totally by coincidence. Because I was in their store to learn what they were doing better than us that we could grow by. And here he's got 2 guys with clipboards, and he's barking and screaming at them with 8 or 10 people around him, cowering, fear. You don't get the best out of people unless you drive a sense of, you can do it, you can be better than that, I'm going to help you be better than that. The greatest attribute of leadership is to get people to do things they never thought they could do.
Yeah.
And everybody can do that. You don't need a brain to do that. That's the Bible again, okay? Okay. Right.
It seems like this sort of passion just permeates everything that you look for. And
Except when I'm in.
And Bernie Marcus had that passion, and you saw that in him. And one of the questions that I had was, do you often find sort of a disconnect between the financial goals of the investor and the sort of passion and emotion that an entrepreneur has for the business that they envision, and sort of how do you kind of navigate that situation?
Well, let me. Business is more than the numbers. Okay. Business has to have a purpose and a goal and an objective, and you pray to God that among those goals and objectives is a value. Is core values that everybody can live with and everybody can appreciate and can respect you for. I think the more important part of Home Depot's success was not that how well we succeeded, but that we succeeded by playing by the rules. And I think that's the case of any business that you aspire to succeed at. I think the minute that you've got to compromise ethics and values, the minute you've got to do things that you're going to regret doing, this current situation with General Motors is to me a horrible, horrible display of a lack of ethics and values. Tragically, 13 lives were lost.
Over $1.90
Well, more over somebody in General Motors deciding that his or her career was more important than doing the right thing. If you lose your job because you did the right thing, wear it as a badge of honor. Okay, so look, I live in the world of numbers. And at the end of the day, the numbers have to work. That doesn't give me license to compromise, and more importantly, it doesn't give me license to be an example for people to do what they want. Now, there's a fine line, and I'll give you, for instance, when we opened up our first 2 stores, the vendors, the manufacturers would only give up, we didn't have a business, we were gonna, hopefully it was going to succeed, we didn't know.
floor space.
So we had enough money to buy merchandise for the eye level for the customer, at the level at which they're now. But our whole concept was this is a big warehouse. So we wanted when somebody would walk in and say, wow, look at all the stuff we got. Right? Now, so what did we do? They wouldn't give us the merchandise to put up there. So we said, we have an idea. How about giving us empty boxes with your labels on them? And they said, fine. So there we were. We put up all these boxes all over that said, people, holy smoke, wow. Look at all the hot water heaters, look at all the light bulbs. Look. Now you could say, well, you misled them. And I said, no, if I sold them a box and said it was full of merchandise and it was empty, then I misled them. But I only accommodated their imagination by having them.
Wow. Students, did you get that quote?
You know, and I guess a purist could say, well, God wouldn't have done that. I said, no, but God wouldn't have had only $2 million to start a business.
Louis?
Go ahead, Luis.
Want to take a crack?
Sure. So talking about more current events, talking about the market, there's a lot of uncertainty, but do you think equities are still a good play in today's economy?
Look, I believe in America. I've never believed more in America than I do right now, largely because of people that are in this room and people like people in this room all over America. We are developing an enormous gap between the people that do well and the people that don't do well. But the problem with that analysis is it doesn't take into account the fact that the reason the gap is getting bigger is the gap between the people that are educated and the people who aren't educated is also getting bigger. You can't believe how important it is for Home Depot to hire qualified people and to promote them as rapidly as they can acquire the knowledge to do a job above the level they're at. So I'm very optimistic. I believe in equities. I think you got to understand the companies you're investing in. Mm-hmm. And this is where the factor comes in, the people factor again. I have a number of money managers now, and some of them buy different kinds of fixed income securities, but for the most part, I'm largely an investor in equities, and I think if you believe in America's future, and I do, if you believe that we are the greatest nation on earth and will continue to be the greatest nation on earth, and I do, and if you think you have faith in your judgment in measuring the quality of a company measured by the people that run it, okay, I mean, you know, I look at David Novak taking Yum Brands out of Pepsi, and I had the good fortune to be invited to be a founding director when they spun out of Pepsi. And I watched what his leadership did, and I watched the values they generated, and enormous values. The stock has gone, it's 15 years now, the stock has gone from 28 to over $300 a share, not counting the dividends. And why? Because he and his team had a way of tapping into this resource of people that wanted the future and help them achieve that future, accomplish that future. So I think equities is the place to be. Now, I'm a risk taker.
And you do advocate long-term investing. Now, we're in a
My
world
average-
of
my-
high-frequency trading and
Stop,
upper
stop.
rapidly. No.
Stop! Wait a minute. Wait.
Flash boys?
Hold it. This guy, Michael Lewis, is an interesting fellow. He makes a lot of money selling books,
Yeah.
okay? Let me tell you about high-frequency trading. And we'll come back in a minute. You asked something earlier before high-frequency trading. You asked me a
Just
question.
about the nature of long-term investing.
Look, my average, if you take the amount of money I have invested in a stock times the number of shares I have in that stock, so you weight the average, my average holding is 34 years.
That's long-term.
I've owned Eli Lilly. Actually, I've owned Eli Lilly since I sold IVAC to them in 1977, so I've owned Lilly stock 37 years, but I owned the predecessor company for 5 years, so that means I've owned that one 42 years. My Home Depot is 35 years. My Yum Brands is 15 years. You know, I'm married to the same lady 57 years, so I guess
Big
that's
investment.
more a tribute to her than it is to me. And by the way, if you knew her like the Myers know her, you'll know she's a saint, okay? But high-frequency trading.
Yeah.
30 years ago, if I bought 1,000 shares of a $45 stock, the commission was $450.
Right.
If I buy 1,000 shares of a $45 stock today, the commission is $20. So let's assume these guys are messing around. By the way, what do they make on a share? A tenth of a share. So maybe it's costing me an extra $1. Now my math is $20 plus $1 is $21, or $450. Help me, my math isn't quick. It's $429 I've saved. And by the way, bear in mind, $450 then
In 19, yeah.
is a whole lot more money than $450. I don't have any interest in any high-frequency trading firm. I happen to know a very good friend of mine is Vinny Viola, West Point graduate, brilliant guy, came up with the idea. He's got a company called Virtu. He's getting ready to take public. He makes a lot of money. He provides liquidity to the market. In other words, when he buys stocks, he's putting cash into the market, okay? And when people want to buy stocks from him, he supplies stocks to them. They don't know, long-term to them is maybe a nanosecond.
Right.
Okay, like they look at me like, you're father time, get out of here, you know.
Exactly. We're talking
But what I'm saying
microseconds.
is, let's be careful of the media. The media used to be bothered by facts. Facts don't matter anymore to the media.
I think in line with that question, there's the question of regulation. And
Yep.
we all know what happened in 2008. But how do you mediate between under-regulation and over-regulation?
I'll tell you a sad story. We've created 330,000 jobs in Home Depot. We have another 60,000 part-time in the spring and the fall. I don't know how many jobs the vendors have created to supply us, but I think a safe number is counting our people and their wives and their children, just that group, close to 1 million. We couldn't start Home Depot today. Why? Because the thing that drove us was that ownership that we made sure everybody got. With the rules and regulations that are in place today, we never would have been public.
Even the employee stock ownership? you
Yeah,
mean,
no,
right?
because you got all these crazy, an option, if you give out an option, you got to take the Black-Scholes value and take that as an expense and subtract it from your earnings.
Right.
If those options expire worthless in 10 years, you don't reverse it. Now, regulations, I'm all for regulations. I'm all for people not abusing the environment. I'm all for people being fair to their associates. I'm all for us respecting each other and speed laws and everything else. But the amount of regulation in America today is killing us. I am more bothered by regulation than I am by the deficit or federal borrowing.
Okay.
And just look at, and I guess you can understand you won't have much trouble guessing what my politics are when I say the following. I'm very, very involved in healthcare. So I think I bring some degree of knowledge, not a lot, but some. This healthcare law is a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. And it will only take a little more time for people to realize just what a nightmare it is. The whole concept of this healthcare law is that every one of you kids will buy insurance because every one of you kids, I didn't get sick when I was your age. Now I'm 78. If I get out of the sunlight 2 minutes, I'm not feeling good, all right? That's age. But if you kids don't sign up and pay your premiums, insurance is simple. A lot of people pay money into the company, and then the company pays out money to people who have claims. And the difference is their profit. But if you don't get a lot of healthy people signing up, now I don't know why I would sign up if I was a kid. Let me explain why I wouldn't. Because it's no longer pre-existing conditions. So which means that, God forbid, if I'm 23 and I get diagnosed with some terrible disease, I can go buy insurance then, and the company's got to cover me. Okay? Secondly, I can ride on my parents' policy till I'm 25 or 26. Why should I buy my own insurance? When Nancy Pelosi said, quote, "You won't know what's in it until we pass it," she was really saying, we won't know what's in it until we pass it. Now, in the spirit of fairness and honesty, we have a lot of bad guys on our side of the aisle too. The fact of the matter is, this healthcare law does not have a happy ending. And I don't know how you're going to fix it, because once you give something away, it's hard to take it back. I want to, let me take this moment to tell you kids something. I'm stealing from you. Can you imagine my life and what I have in my life, and every month all of you collectively send me $4,000 a month because I have Social Security. And this is a travesty. And unless you people wake up and realize you're being ripped off, it's not going to change. Stan Druckenmiller and Jeff Canada and I are going all over America talking to colleges, because the problem you got now, the old guys like me, we have a lobby. And we never get enough.
You vote a lot and everything.
Well, we vote a lot.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we vote a lot. Some of us vote a lot.
Yeah.
But Social Security is being abused. I won. I should not get a check from our government every month. My wife should not get it. Now, frankly, we give it to charity every month. I won't give it back to the government because they'll only spend it.
Right.
Okay?
Well, they don't give it back.
But I won. And I use the example, I buy fire insurance for my homes. God forbid, please God, don't let me have a fire. At the end of the year, the best thing in the world is I don't put a claim in on my fire insurance policy. But the insurance company doesn't give me back my premium. They took the risk. Social Security, guys my age, whenever I get a little bored, which is not very often, but when I get a little bored, I go into a room with a bunch of old guys and I say, hey, they're going to take away our Social Security. And if they're playing cards, they throw it, oh, they can't, it's my money. All they're doing is giving me back. I'll give you the number. I'm going to get $400,000 more out of our government than I gave in.
Wow.
You ready? and you're going to get $400,000 less from our government than you gave it. That's how it works right now. And if you people don't get up in arms and start raising hell, shame on you. This has got to be fixed. And it won't be fixed because the only people these guys in Washington here are the old geezers like me, through AARP and all these other organizations. You people need to get mobilized. People need to understand that the cupboard will be bare when you're my age if you don't fix it now. Okay?
The call
I had to
is
make
out.
that pitch.
Yeah, the call is out. You can do one more. So Marilyn gets another question, and then we're coming to you. So there's 2 microphones out there. So if you want to ask a question, get behind the microphone. But Marilyn gets her shot.
So you spoke a lot about the skills that you look for in the people that you invest in. I was wondering, sort of on our scale, what are some important skills and knowledge that Fairfield students you think should sort of glean from their education to be able to succeed in the marketplace, especially in such a difficult job market that we find ourselves in, and where do you see these opportunities for the students?
I think opportunities abound. They're all over. I don't want to sound trite, but certainly you have to know how to read and write and count. Basics.
Get the fundamentals.
I'll tell you a tragic thing. The current generation of children in public schools in America today, you ready? Is the first generation in public schools in the history of public education in America that will have a lower literacy rate than the previous generation. Civilization is passed on by accumulation. It's incremental, and you give it to the next generation, and they open the door, and they learn a little bit more, and they pass it on. This is the first time the mountain's going down, not up. If I could arm a kid with only one thing, it would be to be sensitive to other people. Okay? And honest. If you don't understand something, say, look, I don't get it. Now maybe you're going to find out that the topic of the subject is beyond your level of competence. I would love to have been a brain surgeon. I never took a course in science after general science in the 8th grade. And B, I don't like the sight of blood. And I can't stand even seeing somebody get a needle. And when I go to the dentist, I'm going like this, So you got to know what you're good at and focus on it, and then be the very best you can be at that. Don't ever settle for second place. No matter if you're going to shine shoes, and that's a very noble calling. Be the best shoe shine guy there is in the world. If you're going to be a plumber, my father told me that. He said, my dad insisted that while I was going to college, he said, but I want you to learn a trade. In case your college degree doesn't help you.
Oh, interesting. So you knew plumbing.
The other night.
Plumbing story.
The other night, no, not a plumbing story, Horatio Alger Association. One of the people that we inducted, his father was a plumber and went to the 8th grade. And I was up introducing a fellow I'd put up for membership. And we were in the back like here. And I said to the guy, my dad went to the 8th grade and my father was a plumber. And we started talking about wiping joints and cutting pipe and threading pipe and hitting joints, copper tubing joints with solder and how we did it. My father on Saturdays used to say to me, come on, get in the truck, we're going to go fix somebody's toilet. And so, guess what? I am a firm believer that college is not for everybody. And I think we do a better job if we said to a kid, learn a trade. Doesn't mean you can't become very successful. Learn a trade, you become a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter. You hire guys, you teach them. All of a sudden you got 200 plumbers. All of a sudden you got 1,000 plumbers. You can do the same thing we did in the retail business.
But it seems you've done so many different things. I mean, is that passion something that you sort of stumble upon, or is it something that you kind of have to seek out?
Look, I'm high energy. I know what I am. I'm high energy. I'm incredibly optimistic. I've never seen a half empty glass in my life. I can't tell you why, but I had a mother that was very optimistic and would never allow my brother and me to give up on ourselves. I had I've had the blessing of so many wonderful people to be with me along the way. I'm not being humble. I hope I'm being totally honest. I'm the beneficiary of a lot of good fortune and a lot of luck. I mean that from the. I'm not. If you saw my grades in college, they were okay, but they were nothing to write home about. But I've been blessed with a wife, children, with friends, with customers. I can go on and on and on. And I'm sorry, and I don't mean to get spiritual, but I am going to right now. This is more the good Lord's work than mine. And I believe that. And a lot of what drives my wife and me philanthropically is our belief. And this again, this is part of me, is our belief that our obligation is to give back. It's not a choice, it's an obligation. And I just think it's more fun being an optimist.
You got your choice.
Somebody wants to feel bad, do me a favor, go someplace, leave me alone. I'm in the middle of a bad snowstorm, or I'm in the business. Hell, when I got, remember Sandy?
Yeah.
I was in the hospital with pneumonia.
Oh.
And they threw me out at 3 o'clock in the morning at NYU because I keep telling people I didn't pay my TV fee, so they threw me out. We don't
Wait,
charge.
didn't you build that hospital?
No, I didn't build it. Somebody else did. But the advantage was when they threw me out at 3 o'clock in the morning, I went downstairs and I had a chance to watch a miracle. I had a chance to watch them take, and I could cry. 22 babies. Every one of them lived. And how they got the kids out of there. And so it was a blessing for me to see this place that has my name, what it was doing when it was on its back.
Yeah.
We had no water, we had no heat, we had no lights. The next day, everybody said, NYU will never open again. We opened up in 8 weeks and 3 days. Okay?
But you saw them.
And so I had a chance. So what I'm saying to you is, sometimes when bad things happen, good things can come from them. You got to find them. I like to tell the story about the father that had 2 sons. One was a perennial optimist, and one was a pessimist. So he was going to do something on Christmas morning. So one Christmas morning, he takes a room and he goes out and he buys all these wonderful gifts and he wraps them and they're all beautiful and he puts them in this room. And in the other room, he puts a pile of horse manure. And he takes a pessimistic kid and he puts him in the room where all the great gifts are, and he puts the optimistic kid in the room where the pile of horse manure is. And he waits an hour. He goes into the room where the pessimist is and nothing's touched. He says, Johnny, why haven't you opened the gifts? He said, look, I don't like the wrapping. I'm sure if I open it, it'll be something I already have or something I don't like or wouldn't want. And the old man leaves and he says, what do I do? And he goes down the hall to the kid with a pile of horsemen. And the kid's throwing a horseman, whistling, and he says, Pete, what are you doing? He says, hell, Dad, with a pile of horsemen all like this, there's got to be a pony around someplace.
That's right.
That says it all. That
Says it all.
That's it.
All right.
Look for the pony. Don't ever stop looking for the pony.
Do we have a couple people with questions?
Fire away.
Or I'm gonna throw out a couple more. All
Go
right.
ahead. Yes,
There's
sir.
one coming down.
Make it hard.
All right. Give him a hard ball.
Ken, as an investor, a director, and a corporate executive, I'd like to know what you think about these activist investors who are complaining about corporate governance. And I'm thinking of like Carl Icahn and his complaint with Apple sitting on billions of dollars in cash and not helping the little investor. And I just wanted your opinion on how you feel about what the little investor could get out of it.
Well, it wouldn't serve any purpose for me to name names. But there are instances where, frankly, management should be shaken up. Okay? So one size doesn't fit all. It's not my style, in good part, because I am an optimist. And so I'd rather invest in a company where I can look forward to watching it grow and succeed and prosper. You know, activists, in a certain, and I don't mean to be use this as a pejorative, but activists in a certain sense can be the equivalent of a scavenger. Now, you could argue with Carl, and Carl's a friend of mine, and by the way, Carl is one of the most enormously generous men I've ever known, and the amount of money he gives to public education is unbelievable. I don't do business with him, so I haven't got a horse in that race. I can't give you a one-size-fits-all answer. I do know of companies where I scratch my head and I say, when's somebody going to do something? How long are people going to accept mediocre results? Look, by the way, I've never been a corporate executive, ever. I've always been sort of like a firebrand all around the edges and stuff. No, of course, I've been on boards of companies and I've been on lead director and stuff like that, but I've never, I had a job for 2 years when I turned 76 being a CEO of a little company I bought until I got somebody in that knew what the hell they were doing, and then I gave them the job, and they're doing a lot better than I would have. But you can't be a generalist. I understand that, I mean, for example, one of the things that disturbs me was when relational investors sent us a letter in 1976 because they didn't like what we were doing in Home Depot. And I didn't, and by the way, they became very close friends of mine, Ralph Whitworth and David Batchelor. In fact, without them asking, we offered to put one of them on the board, and they accepted. 4 years later, David decided to leave, and I begged him not to leave. He was that good a director, and he was constructive, and he was very helpful. So again, you got to look for the good, and if you look hard enough, you'll find it.
But Mr. Icahn feels that some of the people on these directors are just token jobs that they actually like Al Gore being on the board of Apple, and he doesn't belong there because he knows nothing about it.
Let me measure a specific instance where I would go the other way. 1986, Ross Perot, we'd sold EDS to General Motors, and Ross Perot was having a hell of a fight with General Motors. Where'd he go? I'm going to answer your question. If I offended you, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Someone else to get their question. I'd like someone else to get their question.
Oh, but I want to answer. But I want you to hear. So Perot calls me up and says to me, "Why is this General Motors board so indifferent?" I don't know. It was Saturday afternoon, Saturday after Thanksgiving. And I decided, I was curious, so I drove into the city, and we used to have the old Moody's manuals and all the information. And I found out we didn't have the internet then, not like you can do this all at home now. That's another advantage you got. I mean, you'd be amazed at what you have at your fingertips that we didn't have. I'm telling you, the opportunities have never, ever been better. So anyway, how much do you think the total dollars invested by all the outside directors at General Motors was in November of 1986? Total dollar investment. Guess.
I have no idea.
$240,000. Now, when I sit on the board of Yum Brands or Home Depot or even General Electric when I was on the board, my heart used to beat fast when we were making decisions, because guess what? I had skin in the game. And the skin has to be relative to your size. So a guy like me, if I don't own a meaningful percentage in a company that I'm on the board of, or dollar investment, shame on me. I want to act and I should think like an owner, because that's who I'm representing. What's been lost in America are the board members who don't understand that the only reason they're in that room is we can't fit all the stockholders in the same room at the same time. If we only had 3 stockholders, you wouldn't have a board of directors, but if you got 3 million of them. So what I'm saying, sir, is philosophically, I'm a long-term player. And I always ask the question, okay, if I sell that stock, I got to go find something to buy. What's as good as, you do the measure. If there's something better than this one, then I might sell it. But for the most part, I think they provide a wake-up call in cases where sometimes they go after companies, and sometimes they do harm. J.C. Penney's a good example.
Yeah.
Very good example where they did harm. So, look, we're all basically fundamentally bright enough to make our own conclusions. But overall, I would say that's the capitalistic system, and that's the way it's supposed to work.
Very
Okay?
good.
Okay.
Thank
Sit
you.
down.
Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, we're going to go over here.
Sure.
That's a good question.
Mr. Langone, thank you for coming
Ken.
tonight. Ken, that's right. I don't know how I missed that one. So I just had one quick question for you. When a company becomes so big that you can't personally interact with all of your employees, does money become the primary incentive of empowerment?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. You're never too big. We spend as much time with our kids when we had 2,500 stores as when we had 2 stores. That's where the directors see 90 days, 3 stores every 90 days, and you don't. I was at a managers meeting, and there was a kid came up to me and says, nobody ever comes to my store. And I said, where's your store? And he says, Paducah, Kentucky. Well, if I knew where Paducah, Kentucky was, I wouldn't have gone either. But I didn't know it's on the Mississippi River. I didn't realize Kentucky went that far. So on a Sunday afternoon, I flew to Paducah, Kentucky.
You can fly there?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, not commercially. You gotta. You might have to make 3 stops in between, and you want to leave 7 o'clock in the morning to get there. And I got there. The store meetings typically are on a Sunday night once a month, and this was when we were going to have a meeting. And I didn't tell them. I just flew out, and I rented the car, and I drove to the store, and I walked in, and I said, "Here I am." Within a week, at least 300 stores knew I was in that store. Because one thing these kids do, they squeal. They tell everything. You can reach them, but you got to make the effort. But when you reach them, you want them to know you care about them. You want to help them grow. You want to help them realize their dreams. You want to let them know that when they win, you win. And if they don't win, you don't win. This is simple stuff, but by the way, this is all stuff that's in the Bible. All in the Bible. You don't need to be a rocket scientist. Bernie wasn't very bright. I'm certainly not very bright. And Arthur was stupid enough to buy a football team. I mean,
Go Falcons!
Okay, the point is, it's all about the people, and it'll get around. Me picking up a piece of paper when I walk down the aisle of a store, trust me, that got around like wildfire in that store. So don't sell yourself short.
We have all these fancy finance textbooks, and it's really the Bible, as it turns out. So religious studies keep taking those
Let me
classes.
tell you right now, trust me, I believe it. Yes, sir?
It's a pleasure to meet you, Ken.
Thanks meeting you. too.
I want to be an optimist like you, but what would you say to people who read all the headlines and despair that there's a crisis of your kind of values in every American institution today, and what can we do about it?
Well, first of all, the good things, all the newspapers are going broke, so you won't have newspapers too.
Don't have to worry about that.
Okay, that'll take care of itself. The second thing is, you may have to look a little harder, but there's enough reasons to feel good about America, and they're out there. And I'll share with you a story, a very personal story. When I was on the General Electric board, I only watched NBC. I never watched. I'm one of these guys,
You're loyal.
I'm loyal.
Yeah.
There was a television guy on Arnold Diaz. He was on Channel 7. And one night, late at night, I'm in my apartment in Manhattan, and I'm watching Channel 7. Why I'm watching Channel 7, I don't know. And Arnold Diaz had something called a Wall of Shame.
Right.
Where he would promote company, he would tell you about companies. Well, this was a company that was fixing houses, and a man's house burned down out in Long Island. And a guy came along and said, give me your insurance check and I'll rebuild your house. Fast forward, Arnold Diaz has this man with 8 children. It's November, October, they're living in a 48-foot trailer with no lights, no water, and their money's gone. And all they have to show for it is a few sticks coming out of the ground. The guy went back and said, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Your money's gone. I went to bed, shame on me. This is the thing that's personal, shame on me. I did nothing. Nothing. 8 weeks later, just before Christmas, Arnold Diaz is back on. And here's this big man with these kids, and in the background, his house. Somebody built a house.
Wow.
And they all had orange aprons on. And this Arnold Diaz took the mic like you had and puts it in front of this guy. And he said, what happened? He said, well, a kid saw your show, and he worked in a Home Depot store in Bayshore. And he went back to the manager and said, hey, we got plumbers and electricians and carpenters and spacklers and this. If I can put together a team, can we help this guy? Yeah, go ahead, do it. And so the guy, Diaz, said, well, what do you think? He said, well, I believe in God, but I didn't know he wore an orange apron. I was embarrassed. I did nothing. I went to sleep. But some kid out there was moved by it and did something about it. They're out there, find them. And you'll find enough of them that if you bet on them, you'll get rich. But you got to show it by example. You got to let them know that what they do matters. Okay?
That's great. Thank you. I think we have one final question.
Tonight. I guess you've had so much experience. You talked about people, and you've talked about some of the companies that you've worked with and being run by these founders that are passionate and ambitious. What have you learned along the way when the founders decide to step back and finding the right people to carry the torch from what they built?
You don't wait for that point. You start day one, and you start to groom your people. And you let them know if they make a good mistake, they make an honest mistake, it's not career threatening. And I'll tell you why. The only people who don't make mistakes are people who do nothing. Okay? So when you're talking about succession, it's kind of like if you want to have a good marriage at the end of 57 years, you better have a good start to a good marriage at the beginning of the first year. You don't play catch up. The fact of the matter is that we always aspired to grow our people. We loved to throw challenges and responsibilities at people. And incredibly, the more we threw at them, the better they did. And as I said earlier, leadership is when you get people to do things they never thought they could do. That's the greatness of leadership. That they really say, you know what? If I hadn't had my job at Home Depot, we got a guy, and I love this story because he's my pet. I had never influenced his career. Out of the Marine Corps 20 years ago, 21 years old, he married a girl from Southern California, got out of Camp Pendleton. And when he got out, he and his wife were living with her parents. We all live with the in-laws when we first get married because we're broke, okay? And the rent's not bad and the food's pretty good, okay? So anyway, one morning he comes down to breakfast, and in the plate, the mother-in-law, what a hint, the mother-in-law had cut out an ad that Home Depot had run. We were looking for help in our Newport Beach store or something like that. The guy's name is Joe McFarland. He went out and he got the job. Joe McFarland today is the head of the Western Division 700 stores, 100,000 employees, associates. That says it all. Capitalism is alive and well. And if there are any professors out there, okay, and I'm sorry if I give them tight shoes, because I'm not, I've done a lot for Bucknell, and Bucknell did a lot more for me than I did for it. But I have differences with people in our economics department because too many of them are communists, okay? Capitalism works. It works. But bad people do bad things. It isn't the system, it's the people. But if you look at job creation, if you look at kids aspire, look at Joe McFarland. Go to Joe McFarland and say, Joe, you're a bad guy, you succeeded. Did he succeed? It's unbelievable. And there's thousands, there's hundreds of thousands of stories out there of people just like Joe. People of limited, and I'm not, believe me, I'm not modest. People of limited ability like me, for it to happen, it can happen to anybody. You gotta want it. You gotta have passion. You gotta believe in yourself. More importantly, you gotta ask yourself, how good have I been to the other fellow? Have I been so good to that other fellow that I can motivate him or drive him or her to do things they never thought they could do? That's what it's all about. And by the way, that's all in the Bible. Okay?
Ken Langone.